Sarah Sanders lied again and again and again. That's just not my opinion. Those are the facts.
For her part, she said she wants to be remembered as transparent and honest. Somebody said today, we'll know it's true when she denies it.
And if you can't trust what she says, you can't trust her. Bottom line, Sarah Huckabee Sanders has definitely changed that White House briefing room.
Oh man,
okay.
Don't they get tired of this?
So
I mean, it is so predictable that it's almost funny. She has taken so much heat, Sarah Sanders. I mean, honestly, she has taken more heat than any press secretary I've seen in my lifetime.
She's also given more heat.
Yeah, she
with
doesn't
wit
care.
and passion and sophistication. She's done such a nice job representing
You
the
think about how she was treated at that White House Correspondents' Dinner a couple years ago. We talked about it on the show. It was disgusting.
What I love about her, though, is her reaction. She doesn't seem offended. She's just like, you know what? I'm here to do a job. I don't care about what you people have to say about me.
I don't want to go to your parties.
Yeah, I don't really care about being liked by you. But it's interesting to see the reaction. Take a look at the Washington Post Instagram. This is what it says. The queen of gaslighting. Farewell to a lying, disrespectful White House press secretary.
The venom is just, you see the venom.
The definition of gaslighting is manipulating someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity, in case you want to know what gaslighting is. I mean, so apparently that's what she did, question the media's, make them question their own sanity. Maybe someone needed to do that because they're a little off their rocker.
She's also taken a lot of heat for ending, essentially, the White House briefing. They haven't had one in weeks and weeks. And I do think, they, as a former White House correspondent, they should be having the briefing. And we could talk about that on the other side. But Sean Spicer, former White House press secretary, of course, says they don't have the briefing because the media makes it all about themselves. Watch.
The job that people see on television, about 5% of what happens. There is a facilitation of access and interviews to other government officials, to information that's coming in and out of the White House, whether it's personnel, events, or policies. This president has been so much more accessible and engages so much more. I think the briefings serve a utility. Sarah and the rest of the press team should continue with whoever fills this role to engage in the press. They just want it in a briefing room where they can make it about them. When the camera's just focused on her and it's not about them, they don't like it as much because it doesn't work well for their cable contracts and their YouTube views and things like that.
Yes, but
Bingo.
Democratic and Republican administrations took the heat at that podium and were held accountable. And you can give as good as you get. Sarah Sanders was really good at pushing back.
But Ed, you were very good at that job, and you did it for the right reasons. But if your goal is to get transparency and get your questions answered, has any president in modern history ever answered more direct questions from the press?
Is very accountable on that point.
That's the goal.
Absolutely.
So the press briefing is just a tool for that goal.
But if they're preening,
members of the press love.
But if the press is preening for the cameras, the public is smart enough to see that, is my point. And so put it out there and do it and push back.
Yeah, I agree.
And the reporters look silly.
I agree. Put it out there, but whoever the next press secretary winds up being, take notes from Sarah Huckabee Sanders in her attitude, because nothing infuriates the media more. Media who is out there just with an agenda to get you than people who are like, you know what? I know what you're about. I'm going to answer your question and then I'm going to move on. That drives them wild.
Yep.
But tell us, I'm actually really curious, because I've been talking to you guys too about it, who the next press secretary is going to be. And I want to know from you, friends at FoxNews.com, who do you think it's going to be? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, who do you want it to be?
Who do you want it to be?
Yeah.
Even
We welcome outside-the-box thinking in this
Yeah.
exercise. Friends at
Michael Knowles is campaigning for himself.
I have seen that on Twitter. Yes, we've all
fun with it.
We've all seen the names. We want more.
Strong, but with great heart. And I want to thank you for an outstanding job.
I've loved every minute, even the hard minutes. I have loved it.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders is stepping down as White House press secretary after a tumultuous tenure that included many clashes with reporters.
Come on, Sarah, you're a parent. Don't you have any empathy for what these people are going through? These people have nothing.
Hey, Brad, I know you want to get some more TV time, but that's not what this is about. I want to recognize you.
Molly, it's a no-win job caught between the president and an antagonistic press corps. We kind of got a hint of that there. She's taken a lot of personal abuse, but many journalists have been critical of how she's handled the job.
Right. I cannot imagine what a difficult position she's in to have such a non-traditional president and how to convey and explain his positions. And then usually Republican press secretaries for Republican presidents have a difficult time but it's unlike anything we've seen in the past couple of years. But she had to manage both of those very difficult, challenging situations.
Susan, Sarah Sanders will be remembered as the press secretary who presided over the demise of the Daily Press Briefing. We haven't been one for more than 3 months, but that's not really her decision. The president, her boss, decided he'd rather talk to reporters virtually every day than have any staff member out there briefing.
Right. He is in control of his own message to the media. He talks to them every day on Twitter. He talks to the press constantly on South Line before he gets on the helicopter. He's always communicating, making it impossible to have sort of this very congruous relationship with your own media staff, because you conflict with them all the time, and then they're portrayed as liars. Really a no-win. And so I wonder whoever succeeds him, if they can be successful anymore in the Sarah Sanders.
Whoever succeeds Sarah Sanders, yeah. Sarah Sanders, her reputation, I would say, took its biggest hit over what happened after Jim Comey was fired, and she told reporters that she'd heard from countless members of the FBI that they're grateful for the president's decision. She later told Bob Mueller's investigators that that wasn't true. It was a slip of the tongue, a heat of the moment, and she got beat up by the press for not expressing any regret.
Yeah, I think I mean, listen, what I will give her a point for is she's had a tough job, right? She's had a president who sort of created his own news. He's on Twitter and she's in the briefing room and it's happening simultaneously, so that has to be tough. But where I think that, you know, this White House can have some improvement in this job if they decide to go back to daily press briefings is telling the truth, number one, and number two, and more importantly, is really figuring out how this president's going to communicate with the White House press corps, being that there is a press briefing room. Are you just going to get rid of press briefings altogether, or are you just sort of going to have them show up every day and say, oh, no briefing today?
Well, we see how he communicates. He communicates on the run, on the fly, in these so-called pool sprays in the Oval Office. But some journalists really offering harsh assessments after the news. Let's take a quick look.
I will not miss her after she departs the White House.
Well, we were the first hour to ban her her tape, and so I literally and figuratively will not miss her either.
She suffers from liabilities, and her tenure has been fraught with sex, lies, and videotape.
Journalists kicking her on the way out the door.
And excellent choices of a couple journalists to look at there. These are people who say the most horrible things against Sarah Sanders, all while they have had major troubles with their own journalism. And just a larger situation with our press corps, of them not telling stories accurately, not reporting things accurately, not thinking about what the major stories are of the day. I do think we have a major problem with truth-telling in this country, and that everybody could improve on it, but we absolutely need to see better behavior by the press corps.
Maybe they would report stories more accurately if there was more press briefings and the White House actually released accurate information, which Sarah Sanders admitted to not doing.
But you touched on something, which is, you know, the president might say something that for which there's no evidence, or is exaggerated, or is perhaps untrue, and then you're the press secretary and you're getting pounded. And in every administration, this goes on. The press secretary wants to defend the boss without personally vouching for something that may or may not be true, or that you don't personally know whether it's true.
And I think that's the hard part of the job. But what makes this different is in the Mueller report, she literally admits to saying, no, I just sort of made that up.
Okay, in fairness, that was one instance, and she told the New York Times Magazine in a piece that just came out that being a liar certainly bothers me, and Sarah Sanders said there's a difference, in her view, between misspeaking or not knowing something and then maliciously lying. Just briefly.
And I'll just make this one point. In that 2014 Fox poll, 81% of respondents said that they believed President Obama lied at least some of the time on important matters. So this idea that there are lies only coming from the Trump administration and not other past administrations is complete bunk.
Little historical context. Richard Fowler, Susan Frischio, Molly Hemingway. Great to see you all this Sunday.
Joining me now, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, a former presidential candidate and Fox News contributor. Governor, good to see you tonight. Obviously, you've been a very outspoken supporter of Israel. You've been to the Middle East many times. What's your take on what Iran hopes the outcome of this provocation will be?
I cannot even begin to imagine, unless they're poking at the bear just to see what the United States and other countries will do. But it's ridiculous for them to claim they had nothing to do with it. It's like, who are you going to believe, Iran or your lying eyes? I mean, there's the tape. It's clear what they're doing. But this is a region and a country and a regime that has been so dishonest, and they've been so brutal, not only to their enemies like Israel and the rest of the world, but also to their own people. But I think the president's playing this right. He's not rushing into military action, which would be a huge mistake. He's being very careful and calculating. But I think he's also being very clear that this kind of behavior is not something that the rest of the world, not just the U.S., is going to sit back and tolerate.
Yeah, well, it's clearly a tense situation and something that the president will have to monitor very closely in the coming days and weeks. Let me turn your attention to another issue, which is the resignation of your daughter from her job as press secretary at the White House. She's been getting, a lot of very strong comments about her tenure there, and this one comes from President Obama's former top advisor, David Axelrod. Watch this.
If you are the spokesperson for a habitual liar, it's like being fire marshal for a pyromaniac. It's not going to end well for you. In this job, she was called upon to choose between her fidelity to Trump and her fidelity to the truth, and she chose Trump. I mean, her legacy is one of defending the indefensible.
I mean, Sean Spicer got the same kind of treatment, and your daughter, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, also lined up for it when she took over.
The truth is, people that don't like Donald Trump don't like my daughter. And it's not that they don't like her, because most of them don't even know her. They just don't like President Trump. And that's unfortunate, because a lot of us do like him, and we're grateful for what he's doing. I'm a little surprised that this came out of Axelrod. He's a better person than that. He knows better. And I'm really shocked and surprised that that he would go there to that degree. But again, he's a CNN contributor. What is he going to do? They pay people to hate President Trump. That's what they pay them to do, so I guess he earned his paycheck on that particular segment.
I know you've heard the talk, and I think you commented on it a little while ago about what she might do next. You're the former governor of Arkansas, and there's some discussion that perhaps she'd like to follow in your footsteps to the State House. What would you say to that?
Well, I would be thrilled to death if she decided to do that. She's probably the only person ever moving into the governor's mansion who'd lived there before, who spent most of her growing up there. So I think it would be kind of interesting. She knows where all the bodies are buried. I think she probably helped bury some, quite frankly.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know what she's going to I don't know what she's going to do. I frankly don't think she knows either, because she hasn't had time to come up for air in the past 3 or 4 years. So she's going to spend some time with her children. She's going to kind of reassess, decide what's next. But I can tell you this, she is so grateful to the president for the opportunity she had. And if anybody wonders, I can assure you, she loves this president, very loyal to him, didn't leave for any negative. She just left because it's a tough job, and she's got 3 small children and felt it was a good time to make the move.
She's done an enormous amount of travel, and she has put in excruciating hours and done so without any complaints about it. She's a very hard worker, and the president, I know, feels very strongly about having her there. Just real quick before I let you go, he's also said, speaking of loyalty, that he is not going to, encourage Kellyanne Conway to leave based on what a watchdog agency has determined are Hatch Act violations. What do you say to that?
Well, I think he's taken the right position. Kellyanne, like everybody else in the administration, is under just scrutiny to a level that is unprecedented. And I really think it's ridiculous to say that what Kellyanne has said violates the Hatch Act. And it's unfortunate that she's being targeted like that. I think the president's right to stand his ground and stand by his people, because when he does that, they're so much more likely to stand by him. And they do.
Governor, thank you very much. Good to see you tonight. Governor.
Thanks, Martha. Great to be with you.